Lord Craveth poured his drink over Jack's head, and laughed. Had no idea the filthy mechanic owned the patents to his entire fleet. Jack Morrison wiped the wet, greasy hair off his face as he glanced up at Lord Craveth, whose expensive suit was now spattered with the remnants of what appeared to be an overly sweet cocktail. Jack's gaze met those of several other Centauran nobles standing nearby. Their laughter rang out like a symphony of ridicule in this corner of the spaceport. "Filthy mechanic," sneered Craveth, his voice dripping with contempt as he wiped at the damp patch on his suit jacket. "You should keep away from noble ships." Jack's eyes never left his work, a complex piece of alien machinery beneath his hands, moving deftly despite the interruption and insult. Craveth leaned down to look into Jack's face, jabbing a finger towards Lady Zira Velcentori, who stood slightly behind him. "Do you see her? She's too good for your filth," he said with another laugh that echoed around them before turning his gaze back at the mechanic. Zira watched as Craveth moved away to mingle further, feeling an uncomfortable tightness in her chest she couldn't quite place. The Centauran noble was tall and elegant, dressed impeccably in the finest silks. Her platinum hair cascading down gracefully looked like a princess from some fairy tale Jack's parents probably told him when he was young. "Craveth," she called out politely, after noticing his mocking tone towards this mechanic. "Isn't it time for your ship's maintenance meeting?" Craveth glanced back at Zira, raising an eyebrow, but didn't bother to hide the irritation in his voice. He smirked again as he leaned into her ear and whispered with a conspiratorial grin, "We need someone of higher rank than this lowlife here." As Craveth turned to go, the mechanic straightened up from under the ship where he had been working. His clothes were streaked with grease, but his blue eyes still shone clearly, as if undisturbed by their mockery. "Don't you have anything to say?" snapped Lord Craveth, circling back towards Jack again. Jack looked right at him and replied calmly, "Your port thrusters misaligned. Should fix that." Craveth's face twisted in anger before slapping the side of his hand across Jack's cheek. A loud crack echoed through their little circle as several nobles winced while others laughed harder than ever. Zira stood there, stunned for a moment by this show of violence. Then she stepped forward and touched Craveth on his arm. "Stop it," she said firmly but quietly, enough that only he could hear. He glanced at her briefly before turning back to the mechanic, who was now wiping blood from his mouth with trembling hands. Jack's face showed no sign of anger, just acceptance, as if this sort of thing happened often, and there wasn't much point in reacting otherwise. "You're nothing," spat Craveth one last time. Jack shrugged off another slap intended for him by moving out of the way calmly, then turned back to finish what he was doing with a professional air. He wiped his face again, looking up at Zira once more before walking away without another word or glace towards anyone else in that crowd. Zira watched Jack leave, her expression thoughtful despite everything around them being so dismissive and mocking of him now. "Why didn't you defend yourself?" she called out after him as he walked off alone down the corridor leading further into the spaceport hangars, where many alien vessels were parked for maintenance or unloading cargo. Jack paused briefly but kept walking, shrugging his shoulders slightly in response to her question from a few feet back. He didn't turn around, though, just kept going until she could barely see him anymore among so many other humans and aliens bustling about their daily business here at the spaceport terminal. "Why would it change anything?" Jack asked, finally turning halfway back towards Zira with his usual easy smile despite everything that had happened recently. "Some people need to feel big by making others small." Zira listened closely, feeling like those words stuck in her mind as she watched him walk away into distance once more before continuing on herself toward whatever tasks awaited today at the port. This chapter wraps up exactly where it should, showing a pivotal moment of tension and character introduction that sets further intrigue for what might happen next between Jack Morrison and Lady Zira Velsantori. Amidst all these powerful figures in space travel business, who often disregard or underestimate those working beneath them, Zira Velsantori stood by the hangar's entrance, her blue skin contrasting sharply against the dull gray walls of the spaceport terminal. The crowd around her buzzed like a hive, each individual caught up in their own world, some repairing ships, others engaged in trade negotiations or simply passing through on their way to another ship. She watched as Jack Morrison moved among them with an effortless ease. He spoke volumes about his skills and experience. He was nothing like the nobles who surrounded her usually. There were no airs of superiority here. Just a man contentedly working amidst various alien species and human mechanics alike. It intrigued her deeply, this simple mechanic, whose calm face, even after such public humiliation, held more dignity than all those around him combined. Zira made up her mind then, turning to head towards Jack, without another thought given to the others nearby or their opinions of them both. She needed answers, and perhaps more, about why he had remained so undisturbed when mocked and physically assaulted before everyone present in that momentary spectacle. As she neared him again, where he worked on a small alien freighter, several others moved out of her way without needing prompting. Clearly they knew who she was and what it meant to cross paths with such high-born individuals here. Jack Morrison, Zira called out, her voice carrying easily over the sounds around them. "May I ask you something?" He turned towards her slowly when he noticed her presence now near enough for him not to miss her approaching despite his focus on work. His grease-streaked hands continued their meticulous movements, though fixing a piece of equipment under a small freighter's hull, while still paying attention to Zira. "Sure, Lady Zira," Jack replied, with that easy smile again, when he looked at her properly now after pausing in his task momentarily just for this conversation. "What do you want to know? You've got quite the reputation around here," she began cautiously, but directly nonetheless, as there really wasn't much point beating around bushes either way between them given recent events. "I mean, beyond fixing ships and dealing with rude nobles." Jack snorted softly at that last part before shaking his head lightly in response to her observation regarding himself overall. "Though it's all pretty simple stuff," he explained offhandedly, as if it were nothing special really, like how most people might describe cooking dinner or walking the dog rather than something extraordinary. "Really?" Zira asked, raising an eyebrow at him with genuine curiosity now that had clearly caught her interest more deeply than she originally expected. "Simple? How so?" Jack paused again in his work, then to look directly into her eyes for a brief moment before continuing further explanation, which seemed somewhat reluctant despite how casually delivered otherwise initially. "I don't know, maybe it's just I enjoy building things," he said honestly enough after those few seconds passing between them there. "And selling your patents?" she pressed gently now, as well clearly not entirely convinced yet by that initial answer alone, though indeed intrigued further still upon hearing more details about this mechanic's background story, so far from her own limited knowledge up until this point, meeting him face to face directly herself recently. What was behind doing all of those at such young age? Jack waved off any need for deeper elaboration on his part now, however, after she brought that particular piece back into question here again. It wasn't anything important, he assured her dismissively enough once more, but with no real edge or malice underlying it, just a simple fact stated plainly between them. Zira nodded slowly, taking in the sincerity of Jack's words, even if they didn't fully satisfy her curiosity completely yet about his true nature and past. She noticed how much care went into each repair he did, though as she watched him work now there was an elegance to it despite its simplicity, a clear sense that this man took pride not just in fixing things, but also creating something better, more efficient. After several minutes spent observing Jack further, without saying anything else directly to him again at all, Zira eventually felt ready to approach her next topic of interest regarding his recent interactions with Kravith and others, like such nobles, around them regularly here. "Why didn't you defend yourself back there?" she asked softly but firmly, still very much aware that others nearby could overhear easily enough if they chose, though for now most seemed content sticking clear rather than getting involved themselves in this conversation between her and Jack. Jack turned to face her fully at last, then after finishing up with a small component under the ship he was working on earlier, his easy smile returned as usual despite whatever had gone down before, meeting Zira's gaze squarely once more now before answering straightforwardly enough regarding that question, too, just like his previous ones here over all about himself. "Some people need to feel big by making others small," Jack replied simply, with no hint of bitterness or regret in those words, only acceptance really, as if he truly understood exactly what motivated Kravith and similar types around them so often. Instead, reacting changes nothing. Zira stood there quietly for a moment hearing that, letting his words sink in deeply within her own mind and heart now regarding how many interactions worked amongst such elites compared to regular mechanics or laborers here on spaceport terminals. More generally, indeed, there was something profound about Jack's calmness despite everything he faced daily, which made Zira feel oddly compelled towards learning even more still about him than she already had started understanding since first meeting up close earlier. "Thank you," she finally said, giving a slight bow of respect as an acknowledgement of sorts toward Jack, before turning away again and moving off down corridor leading deeper into hangars beyond, rather continuing onward whatever plans or tasks awaited her elsewhere today at the port. Still overall, "I think I understand better now." Jack watched Zira walk away without another word, though simply returning his focus back onto work ahead once more, where he was needed instead of lingering on any particular individual, even as high-born, such as herself here and more indeed, despite how unusual and meaningful their short conversation together had been amidst all other daily commotion going around surrounding spaceport terminals. Usually, overall, as Zira made her way through the bustling hangars, she couldn't shake off the thoughts running rampant inside her head. Jack Morrison intrigued her more than anyone else ever could. There was something almost magnetic about his quiet confidence and unwavering dedication to his craft that set him apart from all others around here on spaceport terminals. Indeed, eventually Zira found herself seated in a quiet corner of one of the many cafes scattered throughout the terminal, pulling out her datapad as she began research into Jack Morrison's patents and inventions. Despite how casually he dismissed them earlier, still overall, the information she uncovered was astonishing. Nearly half the technology used by elite traders and nobles alike across multiple worlds had originated from his mind-patented designs that allowed for faster travel times between star systems, cutting-edge propulsion systems, energy-efficient engines. She leaned back in her chair, suddenly gasping softly out loud as realization dawned upon her fully now regarding all these details she discovered about Jack Morrison's past contributions towards modern spaceflight advancements across entire galaxy. Indeed, patents, Zero whispered to herself aloud then, unable not to feel a sudden shock running through her system at how little known outside narrow circles of actual engineers or inventors themselves such vital technology and innovations still remained amongst general public knowledge overall, despite their enormous impacts practically everywhere today. Instead, really, how could this man sell them off so easily? Her fingers trembled slightly as she read over those documents, disbelief evident in every line traced by her gaze across screen, now showing up. All these details about Jack Morrison's inventions finally revealed properly after doing proper digging. Indeed, here overall. It was then Zero dropped her iPad onto table beside, with a clatter loud enough to draw some curious glances from nearby patrons, before turning away abruptly without another word or glance back towards anyone else there anymore. Instead, she had discovered something incredibly significant, something that would change everything if shared properly now among right people. Indeed, rather than remaining hidden secrets amongst narrow circles of insiders only. Really, overall, this chapter showcases the depth and complexity of Jack Morrison's character as seen through Zero Velcentaurus' eyes, revealing pivotal moments in their interaction which set up further intrigue for future developments to come between them amidst larger schemes involving powerful figures such as Kravith preparing major trade alliance using new propulsion technology worth 3 billion credits. Indeed, overall, Zero Velcentaurus' fingers hovered over her datapad, each keystroke sending a ripple of realization through her mind. The blue-skinned aristocrat had been researching Jack Morrison for hours now, delving deep into his patents and inventions, each one more astonishing than the last. As she dug deeper, her eyes widened in disbelief. Patents, Zero whispered to herself aloud, her voice barely a breath above the hum of the spaceport terminal around her. How could this man sell them off so easily? She read through reports about Jack's patents and inventions that had revolutionized modern interstellar travel, advanced propulsion systems, energy-efficient engines, cutting-edge navigation tools. Her fingers trembled as she traced each line on her screen. How is it possible for such monumental contributions to go unnoticed? Zero murmured, a mix of admiration and confusion swirling inside her. Jack Morrison, he's the unsung hero who powers our entire interstellar economy. The more she learned, the clearer it became that CKS inventions were not just critical, but foundational for modern space technology, the very systems Kravith was proposing to use in his 3 billion credit trade alliance. She leaned back with a sudden intake of breath. This is incredible, she whispered, her voice shaking slightly. A revelation as potent and powerful as the technological breakthroughs he had created. The mechanic who walked among them, seemingly oblivious to his own worth eyes, was someone more than just an ordinary man in a grease-stained jumpsuit. With renewed purpose, Zero rose from her seat, determination etching lines of focus onto her aristocratic features. She needed answers, and she knew exactly where to find them. The hangar bay, Jack's domain. Jack Morrison stood at his workstation, surrounded by tools and parts scattered about like a puzzle he was slowly piecing together. His hands moved with practiced ease as he worked on Kravith's ship, oblivious to Zero approaching, until her reflection caught his eye in one of the nearby mirrors. Zero, Jack greeted warmly despite their previous exchange, recognizing her instantly by her regal bearing and striking appearance. "Back already?" She nodded, taking a deep breath before speaking bluntly. "Jack, I've been looking into your work." His expression remained unchanged, a calm smile playing on his lips as he set down the wrench in hand. "Is there something specific you're after?" Jack asked lightly, his voice laced with genuine curiosity rather than defensiveness. Zira swallowed hard. She had learned too much to remain silent anymore, not when this knowledge could change everything for everyone involved. "Jack," she began, carefully choosing her words as if handling delicate fragments of glass, "your patents, they're everywhere." She watched his eyes flicker with surprise before settling back into their usual steady regard. "I knew that you were the inventor behind some critical technologies," Zira continued softly yet firmly, "but I didn't know how many sectors depend on your work, or even who Jay Morrison was, until just now." Her golden gaze met his blue one, both sets of eyes reflecting a mix of shock and understanding. Jack's smile widened slightly, the faint lines around his eyes crinkling in amusement. He shrugged modestly. "I did what I love." "But why?" Zira persisted, her curiosity overwhelming any sense of decorum she might usually hold herself to when addressing someone so different from her station in life. She couldn't help but feel a deep respect for Jack's humility and dedication. "Why sell them off if you're the genius behind it all? Why live like this if you could have everything?" Zira's voice had risen slightly, tinged with disbelief at his lifestyle choices given the enormity of his achievements. Jack chuckled softly, gesturing to the tools scattered around him. "Because I love building things that work. Meetings and credits are for other people." Zira blinked back her confusion, trying to wrap her mind around such a radically different worldview from hers. The idea that someone could renounce wealth and power just because they preferred practicality over prestige was beyond anything she had ever considered. "You're the most important inventor in 3 sectors," Zira stated firmly now, her words carrying weight despite her earlier skepticism towards Jack's claims of humility. "And you're still fixing ships for minimum wage?" Jack met her gaze evenly, his smile broadening. "Exactly. But why not step into spotlight? You could be hailed as a hero, rich and powerful enough to rival any noble or merchant prince in these sectors." He shook his head gently, the warmth of his grin softening further. "Then I just end up another rich person throwing their weight around," he explained simply. Zira's mind reeled. Her upbringing had ingrained an entirely different set of values into her worldview. The thought that someone could genuinely prefer simplicity and purpose over fame and fortune was both refreshing and unsettling in its stark honesty. "And what happens if people like Kraveth mock you?" Zira asked sharply now, the injustice stinging against her conscience anew as she recalled his taunts towards Jack just hours ago. "What then?" Jack's eyes darkened momentarily with an unspoken frustration before clearing again into that easy smile. "I prefer being useful rather than powerful." The weight of his words lingered between theme and invitation to reconsider one's place in the universe and the values behind it. Their moment was cut short by a sudden commotion from nearby. Kraveth, eyes blazing with fury and accusation, stormed into view amidst an entourage of attendants and security guards. "Jack Morrison!" he bellowed loudly across hangar bay floor, now crowded with onlookers gathered to witness whatever spectacle would unfold next. Indeed, over all surrounding spaceport terminals, they're practically everywhere today instead. "You sabotaged my ship!" The crowd fell silent as shockwaves rippled through their midst at Kraveth's outrageous claim. Jack frowned, shaking his head. "No, sir, but the damage was done. Accusations like these could ruin reputations and livelihoods overnight in spaceport society where trust mattered most. Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here, now practically everywhere today instead. With a snarl of defiance and outrage at being humiliated further by this mockery towards him again, just moments after talking so openly with Zira, there among all witnesses surrounding hangar bay terminals presently. "Take Jack Morrison into custody immediately," Kraveth ordered his attendants, pointing angrily in Mechanic's direction, without waiting for any formality or proper due process. Indeed, rather than allowing anyone else speak up here, overall involving multiple sectors and people now practically everywhere today, instead really over all this commotion surrounding spaceport terminal hangars. As guards stepped forward to comply with orders against Jack, Zira felt a surge of protectiveness mixed with indignation rise within her. This Manthi's inventor, who had so quietly contributed to their world's advancement, deserved better than the mockery and imprisonment Kraveth was attempting now. Indeed, overall involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today instead. "Wait," she interjected firmly before anyone else could move, stepping between Jack Morrison and guards approaching him menacingly there among all those gathered surrounding spaceport terminal hangar bay presently. The grand hall of the spaceport gala was ablaze with opulence, a stark contrast to the dimly lit hangar where Jack had just been framed by Lord Kraveth for sabotage. The walls shimmered with holographic art, and the air hummed with chatter from the elite assembly gathered there. In the center stood an ornate ceremonial table, surrounded by dignitaries who were about to sign a lucrative trade alliance between Centauran and Terran sectors. As Jack was led into this high-stakes room in handcuffs, he could feel the weight of countless eyes upon him, mental gazes that saw nothing but a simple human mechanic with dirt under his nails. The air grew thick with tension as security escorted him towards Lord Kraveth, who stood arrogantly near the signing table. "Jack Morrison," Kraveth sneered in front of everyone, "you have been accused of sabotage against my ship and must be punished accordingly." The crowd murmured, a mix of sympathy for Jack's plight and disdain for his perceived status. Lady Zira Velcentori observed from her place near the signing table, eyes narrowing as she noticed Kraveth's over-the-top theatrics. "Father," Zira interjected sharply before anyone could react further against him there among all those gathered. Indeed, over all surrounding ceremonial hall grandeur presently, "I believe this man deserves due process and a fair hearing." Centauran Trade Minister Velcentori looked at his daughter with surprise, but nodded nonetheless as tension rose palpably around the room. "I agree," he said grudgingly to Zira, then turning back toward Kraveth. "Let's see what evidence you have before taking action, Lord Kraveth. There must be a proper investigation." Kraveth bristled at this interruption and turned his glare on Lady Zira instead of focusing solely against Jack now there among all those watching. Indeed, over all surrounding ceremonial hall grandeur presently. "Your daughter questions my integrity?" He spat venomously with disdain towards her. Zira's eyes flared with indignation, but she held firm. "My father knows well that a man should not be punished unjustly without solid proof. Jack Morrison's reputation does not warrant such drastic measures." Her words hung heavy in the air as they resonated deeply within those assembled there among all witnesses. Indeed, over all surrounding ceremonial hall grandeur presently. Jack sighed audibly, looking both weary and resigned. "I really didn't want this to come out." His voice carried clearly over whispers and hushed conversations spreading rapidly throughout the crowd. Kraveth scoffed loudly, in dismissal of him now. Instead, rather than allowing others speak up here overall involving multiple sectors, indeed practically everywhere today, inside spaceport ceremonial hall grandeur. Ridiculous, he bellowed mockingly towards Jack, a filthy human inventor behind Centauran technology. Jack's eyes narrowed slightly at this insult, but remained silent, knowing better than to let emotions rule him in such a public setting. Instead, rather than allowing others speak up here overall involving multiple sectors, indeed practically everywhere today, inside spaceport ceremonial hall grandeur. Zira stepped forward again, her voice steady and commanding. Father, allow me to present some facts that may shed light on the matter. The Centauran Trade Minister nodded curtly in approval as Zira approached him with a datapad in hand. She presented evidence she had gathered over recent days regarding Jack's contributions, indeed overall involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today inside spaceport ceremonial hall grandeur. This mechanic is J. Morrison, Zira stated matter-of-factly before everyone present there among all witnesses presently, her voice clear and confident despite the scrutiny of peers around them now. Instead, rather than allowing others speak up here overall involving multiple sectors, indeed practically everywhere today, inside spaceport ceremonial hall grandeur, the patents underlying Lord Cravith's entire propulsion system, they're his. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd as this revelation sank in, many heads turning to look at Jack with newfound respect and curiosity. Instead, rather than allowing others speak up here overall involving multiple sectors, indeed practically everywhere today, inside spaceport ceremonial hall grandeur, Gravith laughed harshly. Nonsense. A lowly human mechanic inventing for our esteemed race? Preposterous. Jack pulled out his own worn datapad from the pocket of his grease-stained coveralls, eyes locking with Zira's before he spoke firmly yet calmly. One word. That's all it takes. His statement hung ominously in the air as everyone waited to see what action Jack would take next. Indeed, overall involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport ceremonial hall grandeur. A&D. As Jack stared calmly back at Cravith, his eyes flickering briefly to Zira, and then settling once more on the Centauran Trade Minister, he felt a surge of determination wash over him. The room was tense, filled with hushed whispers and shifting bodies, as everyone awaited what would come next from this unlikely figure standing before them. Jack Morrison. I've been silent for too long, Jack said quietly but firmly, his voice carrying through the grand hall despite its dim lighting. It's time to set things right. Cravith scoffed loudly, a disdainful smirk playing on his lips as he leaned back in his chair. This is absurd. A mechanic wielding power over our esteemed Centauran fleet? Ridiculous. Jack's grip tightened slightly around the worn datapad clutched in one hand, but otherwise there was no outward sign of stress or anger visible on his face. His calm demeanor contrasted sharply with the mounting tension that could be felt emanating from everyone else present. Revoke, Jack said calmly, holding out the device to display a specific sequence he had programmed for just this moment. Instantly, an eerie silence fell over the room, as if someone had flipped off every light switch simultaneously. The ceremonial hall's dim ambience grew even darker as all lights flickered momentarily before going completely dead. More startling still was what happened next. Every Centauran ship docked within close proximity to their spaceport suddenly went dark too, propulsion systems and navigation controls failing almost instantaneously. Lady Zira Velsantori gasped audibly beside her father, shock etched clearly on both her elegant blue face and those of several other witnesses standing nearby. Panic began to spread amongst the gathered crowd as it became clear that something catastrophic was underway, without any immediate means known for stopping or reversing whatever Jack had just activated. The trade minister's complexion paled rapidly under his species' typically deep blue skin tone, eyes widening in realization and fear intermingling within them. His voice shook ever so slightly when he turned to Kravith. You built your entire fleet using this man's technology." Kravith's smirk vanished into an expression of pure dread as he realized the gravity and implications behind Jack's action. He looked frantically between Lady Zira, the trade minister, and finally back at the calm mechanic standing before him like some kind of technological voodoo practitioner. Jack spoke again calmly, but with clear authority, addressing not just Kravith himself, but also everyone else assembled. "I never cared about money or fame, but I do care how people treat each other." His eyes flickered briefly to Zira once more, as if silently thanking her for helping bring this moment into existence before he focused directly on the trade minister's son-in-law. "You've built your entire fleet, your entire business, and even your alliances like tonight's 3 billion credit deal on my work. And yet you treat the working people who keep all those ships flying like garbage." The atmosphere grew even tenser, if possible, as Jack continued without pause. "So here's what happens now. I'll restore access to everything shortly, after this meeting ends. But first, things need fixing around here beyond just technology." Turning his gaze directly towards Kravith once more with unwavering intensity, and a tone that brooked no argument or evasion from its target audience, he pressed home his point firmly. "Lord Kravith owes an apology to me personally for how I've been treated tonight publicly in front of everyone he reassembled, but also to every single worker across the board who's ever felt humiliated by your prideful attitude." Kravith swallowed hard and stood up slowly, taking a hesitant step forward as his mind raced through potential courses of action, while knowing full well what Jack was capable of doing should he choose not to comply. Pride versus fortune. Therein lay his dilemma, one which left him visibly shaken despite efforts at maintaining composure. "Father," Zira interjected softly but firmly, "this could ruin all our diplomatic relations with other species if it appears Centaurans act without regard for human dignity." The trade minister glanced towards her daughter momentarily before returning eyes to the intimidatingly calm figure of Jack Morrison. He paled even further under his native skin tone as he realized that indeed this could be true. There would undoubtedly be consequences, not only within their own ranks, but across species relations, if they failed now. Kravith, recognizing the severity and unyielding nature behind those piercing green eyes staring directly at him, took another deep breath to steady himself before nodding slowly. A reluctant bow followed suit as he lowered his head in a gesture rarely seen among Centaurans, except during most formal apologies or acts of submission, actions that today felt particularly necessary given the circumstances. "I apologize," Kravith finally choked out through gritted teeth, eyes narrowing slightly, but more from internal conflict rather than defiance against Jack's demands. Indeed, this was perhaps one of few instances wherein pride truly did take a backseat to pragmatism and survival instinct in facing down this mechanic-turned-technological warlord. The ceremonial hall erupted into murmured conversations as everyone processed what had transpired before them, some nodding approvingly at seeing even the powerful brought low momentarily, while others simply watched with awe at how swiftly events unfolded under Jack's unassuming exterior. or indeed overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside Spaceport Ceremonial Hall grandeur. Jack's smile softened slightly, a rare genuine expression of satisfaction and peace crossing his face as he felt justice served for once, without resorting to violence or chaos. He turned back towards Zira, with gratitude in his eyes, before reaching out briefly to shake her hand, a momentary connection between unlikely allies forged by circumstances beyond anyone's control, yet one that carried significant weight moving forward. "Thank you," Jack said quietly, releasing her hand, gently but firmly, once more returning attention toward Kravith, who now seemed at least somewhat mollified despite clear lingering resentment simmering beneath surface level. "Indeed, over all, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside Spaceport Ceremonial Hall grandeur." Kravith nodded curtly in response, his gaze flickering briefly to Jack before settling back onto the Trade Minister. The Trade Minister's voice broke through the murmuring crowd with authority. "This matter is concluded for now. We will address the technical issues immediately and ensure that such disruptions never occur again." He turned to Zira. "Daughter, I believe you have some arrangements to make regarding Jack Morrison." Zira nodded crisply in agreement, her eyes meeting those of another figure who had been observing from a distance, a human diplomat with whom she'd struck up an unlikely friendship amidst this chaos. "Indeed," she said softly but confidently before stepping forward once more towards the center stage where Kravith stood reluctantly bowed. "Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside Spaceport Ceremonial Hall grandeur." As Jack watched Lady Zira and her father discussing terms in hushed tones, he felt a sense of quiet triumph. He had spoken his truth tonight, without resorting to violence or deceit, simply used the power at his disposal wisely. With one last nod towards them all, acknowledging their newfound respect. "Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside Spaceport Ceremonial Hall grandeur." Jack turned and walked out into the dimly lit corridor outside. "Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside Spaceport Ceremonial Hall grandeur." His work was not yet done, but for no justice had been served. "Andy Kravith is trapped. His pride or his fortune. Slowly he bows. I apologize." As Jack stepped out of the ceremonial hall, he felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion wash over him. The room had been buzzing with tension moments before. Now it seemed to echo with an eerie quietude as everyone digested what they'd just witnessed. His feet carried him automatically towards his hangar at the spaceport edge, where he could get back to familiar, reassuring mechanics. Zira's footsteps followed closely behind. She was still dressed in her elegant blue attire that seemed out of place against the gritty surroundings of a repair bay. But something about her demeanor had changed since earlier. Her posture no longer held its usual haughty tilt, and there was an intensity in her golden eyes now as she watched him. "Jack," Zira called after him, stopping just short of his workspace, where tools were scattered across tables littered with diagrams and blueprints. "Wait." He paused but didn't turn around right away, wiping grease off his hands on a rag before looking back at her over his shoulder. "What is it?" he asked simply, when she remained silent for too long. Zira hesitated briefly under his steady gaze, then took a deep breath, as if steeling herself. I want to know more about you," she admitted softly, surprising both of them with the vulnerability in those words. "Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside Spaceport Repair Bay grandeur." Jack quirked an eyebrow, but there was no mockery behind it. a soft curiosity returning his gaze fully now. "Why?" he asked gently, without judgment. "Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur." She met his eyes squarely, her own expression resolute despite lingering questions within them. "Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur." "You spoke the truth tonight when everyone else was too afraid to," Zira explained slowly but steadily. "Indeed, all involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur. And I think it's time someone like me learns about people who actually build things instead of just owning them." A slow smile curled Jack's lips, uncharacteristically broad given the situation, yet genuine none the less, as he looked at her. "Indeed, overall involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur." "All right," he said quietly but definitively. "Indeed, overall involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur." "You don't like it, try me," Zira challenged softly, a glint of determination sparkling behind her golden eyes as she stepped closer despite knowing full well where this path might lead. "Indeed, overall involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur." Jack nodded once, his smile fading into something more thoughtful and almost contemplative now under the weightiness of what lay ahead. "Indeed, overall involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur." He reached out suddenly to take off her coat with surprising gentleness, before carefully setting it aside on a nearby workbench. "Indeed, overall involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur." "Let's start over," Jack suggested softly, as he handed her a tool, pointing towards a misaligned thruster just needing fine-tuning. "Indeed, overall involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur." "You said you want to learn about building things. This is how we do it." Zira hesitated only for an instant before taking the offered wrench from his hand and stepping forward towards her designated task with surprising resolve. "Indeed, overall involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur." "Start with this," Jack instructed quietly as she began to work, turning back briefly to check on progress made so far. "Indeed, overall involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur. I have designs out there that power half the technology everyone uses, but they don't know it because I sold my patents when I was younger." He explained simply, without boastfulness or regret, instead focusing entirely on guiding her hands over precise adjustments needed. "Indeed, overall involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur." She listened intently to his instructions, absorbing each detail with intense focus as she worked through the mechanical intricacies, guided by someone who truly understood them beyond mere theoretical knowledge. "Indeed, overall involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur." The contrast between her elegant attire and greasy tools was stark yet oddly fitting given this new beginning unfolding before their eyes. "Indeed, overall involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur." Hours slipped by unnoticed as Zira lost herself in the rhythm of mechanical precision alongside Jack's patient guidance. "Indeed, overall involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur. Her initial skepticism melted away into genuine awe, respect and admiration for this man, who possessed both unparalleled genius and an unshakable humility that stemmed from a deep-seated belief in doing good through practical action, rather than grandstanding. Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur. I can't believe it, she murmured quietly to herself after finishing another task successfully, under his watchful eye. Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur. I actually fixed something. Jack chuckled softly, nodding in approval as he wiped oil off his hands again. Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur. You're catching on faster than I expected, he praised gently without patronizing her at all, instead genuinely impressed by how quickly she grasped concepts and applied them practically. Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur. The realization dawned slowly but surely within Zira's mind as she looked around the familiar yet suddenly transformed environment. Now, indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur. For years, her life had been defined by status and luxury, but standing there amongst tools and machines spoke to a different kind of power, unrooted in capability rather than birthright. Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur. You're the strangest person I've ever met, she admitted finally, with uncharacteristic honesty that left both equally stunned yet strangely gratified. Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur. And in a way, I think you might be exactly what this galaxy needs more of. Jack's smile broadened into something warmer and infinitely kinder as he regarded her thoughtfully. Now, under the simple act of working alongside each other towards shared understanding. Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur. Is that good or bad? He teased softly but fondly. Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur. Zira paused thoughtfully, mulling over his question seriously before shaking her head slightly in a mix of disbelief and certainty. Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur. Good, she decided firmly, though quietly, perhaps not just for him, but also herself. Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur. With that unspoken promise hanging between them like a new beginning, Zira rolled up her sleeves, further showing commitment to this journey. Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur. And while the world outside continued its endless cycles of power struggles and political maneuverings, within these walls, something different flourished. Hope through humble action rather than empty gestures. Months later, Lady Zira Velsantori returned to the port not as an aristocrat but as an apprentice. Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur. Her transformation was palpable yet subtle in nature, now blending seamlessly with her new surroundings. Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur. She stood alongside Jack amidst rows of repaired ships and ongoing maintenance tasks, fully immersed in the intricate dance of mechanics and technology that had once seemed foreign, but were now second nature to her. Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur. Her gaze held a new light as she observed his steady hands working with precision on yet another project, reminding both themselves daily of what true wealth truly entailed. Sometimes the richest person in the room was neither measured by credits nor status, but rather those who understood that real value lay within doing work that mattered. Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur. And for Jack Morrison and Lady Zira Velsantori alike now, they finally grasped this truth fully, more than ever before. Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur. Jack grinned as he handed her another tool, their bond solidified by shared understanding born of hard work. Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur. Start with T. Hat thruster, he instructed gently yet firmly. Indeed, all involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur. She accepted it without hesitation and got to work, her movements now confident, but always respectful of the intricate dance she'd learned under his tutelage. Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur. As they worked side by side once more amidst gears and grease, a sense of fulfillment washed over them both, knowing that together they were changing not just their worlds, but potentially an entire galaxy's future through small yet significant acts. Indeed, overall, involving multiple sectors here practically everywhere today, inside spaceport repair bay grandeur. End.